betrayal, and separation. My life changed drastically when I was just 13 years old. The man I admired, my father, had an affair. He left my mother, my sister, and me behind, moving in with his new partner, Janet. It was as if the ground had opened up beneath our feet. My mother, a strong and resilient woman, tried to keep the family together, but the impact of my father's abandonment was evident in every aspect of our lives. That first day after the separation, I remember my mother crying in the kitchen, trying to prepare dinner as if everything was normal. My sister, younger than me, didn't fully understand what was happening and kept asking when Daddy would come home. I, on the other hand, already grasped the gravity of the situation and felt a mix of anger and sadness consuming me from the inside. Seeing my mother struggling to maintain a facade of normality while falling apart inside was devastating. Every tear she shed was a reminder of the pain my father had caused. In the following weeks, the house seemed quieter than ever. The laughter and playfulness that once filled our home disappeared, replaced by a gloomy and oppressive silence. My mother tried to distract us by planning small outings and activities, but the void left by my father's absence was palpable. Every corner of the house seemed to hold a painful memory, from the couch where we watched TV together to the dining table where we shared meals. Reduced visits. In the first few months after the separation, my father still tried to maintain sporadic contact. On weekends, he would take us on outings, but the dynamic was never the same. The visits, once moments of joy, became a constant reminder of our new reality. Janet's presence was bothersome, a symbol of why our family had been destroyed. I remember one particular weekend, shortly after my half-brother was born. We were at the park, and my father was clearly more interested in the baby than in me and my sister. As he pushed the stroller with a smile on his face, I wondered if he would ever give us the attention we deserve again. The feeling of being sidelined was devastating. Seeing my father so happy and involved with his new family was like a knife to the heart. Every smile he gave the baby was a reminder that he had chosen another life over ours. Gradually, the visits became less frequent. My father always had an excuse, a new project at work, commitments with Janet, or the baby. Each excuse was a blow to our hope that he still cared. I remember one time when my sister, with tears in her eyes, asked why Daddy didn't come to see us anymore. I had no answer. How do you explain to a child that our father had emotionally abandoned us, even if he was physically present at times? How will the father's decision to prioritize his new family affect his relationship with the narrator? Find out in the next chapter. If you like following stories, reports, and surprising revelations seen on Reddit, subscribe to our channel and turn on notifications. Priority to the new family. At 16, my father dealt us another devastating blow. He invited us to dinner at a restaurant, an event that was supposed to be a reconciliation attempt but soon turned into a cold and painful announcement. I got a job opportunity in another city, he said with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. Janet sat beside him, beaming at the prospect of a new life. The baby, now a toddler, played innocently with the cutlery. As my father spoke about the benefits of this move for his new family, I felt an overwhelming weight on my chest. He was leaving us again, this time for good. The city they were moving to was over 300 kilometers away, making regular visits impossible. My mother, who always tried to maintain her composure, couldn't hide the pain on her face. My sister cried silently, squeezing my hand under the table. I looked at my father, hoping to see some sign of regret or hesitation. But all I saw was determination and perhaps relief. He had truly decided to move on without us, his original family. Frustration and anger grew within me. How could he abandon us so easily? How could he look at us and feel nothing but obligation? Cutting contact, from that moment, I decided I couldn't keep suffering for someone who clearly didn't care anymore. I cut off all contact with my father. I blocked his number, ignored his attempts to contact me on social media, and refused any gifts or letters he sent. My mother respected my decision, though I saw the pain in her eyes every time my father tried to reach out. She knew I was doing what I needed to protect my heart, but the situation still hurt her deeply. I focused on my studies and my friends, trying to fill the void my father had left. But every time I saw a happy family on the street or watched a movie where the father was a hero, the pain and anger resurfaced. My father wasn't there to see my school achievements, to help me choose a college, or to advise me on the challenges of adolescence. He was busy building a new life, a life that didn't include my sister and me. One afternoon, while I was in my room, My sister came in crying. "Why doesn't he love us anymore?" she asked, her voice choked. I had no answer. How do you explain to a child that our father chose another family? All I could do was hug her and promise that we would always be together, that we would never abandon each other as he did. What will happen after this definitive rupture? Keep watching to find out. Rejected calls and visits. After my father's definitive move, he tried several times to re-establish contact. At first, he called religiously every Sunday. The phone would ring, and seeing his number on the caller ID, I felt a mix of anger and sadness. I let it ring until the answering machine picked up. His voice came after the beep, always full of a false sweetness that deeply irritated me. "So, just want to know how you are. I miss you." I would stop the recording without listening to the rest. Letters also started arriving by mail. Initially, they were accompanied by gifts, expensive toys for my sister and modern gadgets for me. My mother let us decide what to do with them. My sister sometimes kept the gifts, but I never accepted mine. Each time I opened a letter, I saw words like missing you and sorry, but everything seemed empty and hypocritical. How could he miss us if he left without hesitation? I tore up the letters, throwing the pieces in the trash, while my mother watched in silence, respecting my pain. Absence at important events. The years passed, and important moments in my life came and went without my father. When I graduated from high school, my mother was there, tears of pride in her eyes. My sister, too, cheering enthusiastically. But looking out into the audience, I felt a void. A chair was purposely left empty. My mother and I decided not to invite my father. He didn't deserve to be there to share this moment with me. At my college graduation, his absence was even more palpable. I was among the top students in my course, and my name was announced with honor. I looked at the audience and saw my mother, my sister, and a few close friends. The empty chair was there again, a painful reminder that my father had missed another important milestone in my life. Reconciliation attempts. Despite all the years, reconciliation attempts continued. My father sent emails, messages on social media, and even tried surprise visits to my house. On one of these visits, I opened the door to see his aged face, with a look of sadness. "Son, please, can we talk?" he pleaded. Without saying a word, I closed the door in his face. The gesture was final and painful, but necessary. There was no room in my life for someone who had caused so much pain. Holidays were especially difficult. We received Christmas cards from my father, always signed by him, Janet, and my half-brother. The affectionate words didn't touch me. Their presence, even in paper form, was an unwelcome intrusion into our family celebration. My mother tried several times to persuade me to at least read the cards. "He's trying, my son. Maybe it's time to forgive," she would say, her voice full of hope I couldn't share. I always refused, maintaining my firm stance not to let him back into my life. Will the father manage to regain the narrator's trust? Find out in the next chapter. Moving back. After years of frustrated reconciliation attempts, the news that my father was moving back to our hometown hit like a bomb. My mother received an unexpected call from Janet, informing her that my father's new job offered the perfect opportunity for them to move back here. When I heard the news, I felt a wave of anger and anxiety. He was really coming back, bringing all the painful memories and unresolved conflict with him. Messages and constant pressure. It didn't take long for the messages to start arriving. First, it was my half-siblings trying to make contact. "Hi, I'm excited to finally get to know you," my half-brother wrote, trying to establish a connection. I ignored the message, feeling I owed them nothing. Janet also tried multiple times, sending polite and appealing messages, trying to persuade me to give my father a chance. "We try to do the best for all of us," said one message. "He really misses you. Please think about giving him an opportunity." Each message I read increased my frustration. How could they not understand the depth of the pain I felt? Their words seemed empty, a distant echo of the real hurt and betrayal. Family pressure and internal conflict. The pressure didn't just come from my father and his new family. My mother and sister also started suggesting I reconsider. "He's trying, he wants to make amends," my mother said with a hopeful tone. "Maybe it's time to forgive and move on," my sister added, wanting to see the family reunited. These suggestions increased my internal conflict. Part of me wanted to believe things could get better, that we could rebuild something from what was lost. But the hurt was too deep, and the idea of reconciliation seemed a betrayal to the pain I had carried for so many years. First meeting after the return, I reluctantly agreed to meet my father after an emotional appeal from my mother. I accepted a coffee in a public place where I would feel safe and in control. Seeing him sitting at the table, older and with a tired air, I felt a mix of anger and sadness. We sat in silence for a moment until he finally broke the ice. "I know I hurt you," he began, his voice trembling. "But I want a chance to make things right." My words came out bitterly. Make things right? After all these years? Do you really think you can fix everything with a few words? The conversation was tense and full of emotions. He talked about regret, love, and missing me. But to me, the words seemed empty, without substance. When he mentioned Janet and how she wanted to be part of our family, my anger exploded. "Janet? She's not part of my life. And neither are you," I said, abruptly standing up and leaving the cafe, leaving him sitting there, shaken and silent. Attempts at proximity. His constant presence in the city made unwanted encounters more frequent. Running into him at the supermarket, seeing his car in a mall parking lot, knowing he was at a community event. All this brought up feelings I preferred to keep buried. Every time we crossed paths, there was an attempt on his part to get closer, always met by my resistance. "I just want to talk," he would say. "I have nothing to say to you," was my standard response. Social events and increasing pressure. Social events became especially difficult. At family gatherings and community events, my father and his new family's presence was a constant shadow over what should have been moments of joy. At a distant relative's birthday party, he approached during the cake cutting, trying to start a casual conversation. "The cake is great, don't you think?" he asked, trying to ease the tension. "I'm not here to socialize with you," I responded coldly, moving away to avoid further interaction. Unexpected visits. The final straw came when he started showing up unexpectedly at my door. On a Sunday afternoon, while relaxing at home, I heard the doorbell ring. Opening the door, I found my father, with a hopeful look on his face. "Can we talk, please?" he asked. The anger bubbled inside me. "I've told you many times I don't want to see you." "Respect my space," I said, slamming the door. Will the narrator give in to family pressure? Find out in the next chapter. Argument with the fiancé. The pressure to reconcile wasn't just coming from family. Larry, my fiancé, began getting involved in a way I didn't expect. It all started during a dinner at home. We were eating in silence when Larry, in a cautious tone, said, "Honey, I think you should consider talking to your dad." I looked at him, incredulous. "What? You're on his side now?" I asked, anger rising quickly. Larry sighed, putting his cutlery aside. "That's not it, John. I just think maybe this is an opportunity for you to resolve things. My father always said it's important to keep the family together." Emotional explosion. My hands started to tremble. "Keep the family together?" "Larry, you have no idea what he did. He abandoned us, made me feel worthless. And now you want me to just forgive and forget?" My voice was loud and filled with emotion. Larry tried to calm me. "I know it's hard, but sometimes it's necessary to take a step back and think about the future. Maybe this could bring you peace." His attempt at being reasonable only increased my frustration. Peace? How can I have peace with someone who destroyed my life? It's not that simple. Mediation attempt. Larry, trying to prevent the argument from escalating, suggested we talk more about it. "Maybe we can discuss this more when you're calmer," he said softly. But I was already beyond the point of no return. "I don't need to talk more about this. I need you to support me, not defend someone who hurt me so much." Emotional breakdown. The impact of the argument was devastating. That night, while Larry tried to comfort me, I turned my back on him, feeling a deep pain. "I can't believe you're on his side," I whispered, my words filled with sadness. Larry tried to apologize. "I'm not on his side, I'm on your side. I just want you to have a chance to find some kind of resolution." But to me, his words sounded empty. The idea of resolving anything with my father seemed impossible, and Larry's lack of understanding about this hurt me deeply. Effort to reconnect. Larry didn't give up easily. In the following days, he continued trying to convince me, using examples from his own life to try and make me understand. "I had a terrible fight with my brother, remember? It took years, but we managed to resolve it. It brought a lot of peace to both of us." I shook my head, frustrated. "That's different, Larry. Your brother didn't abandon you. He didn't trade you for another family, and make you feel worthless? With every attempt Larry made, I felt more isolated and misunderstood. The tension between us grew, creating a barrier that seemed insurmountable. Third-party intervention. To complicate things further, Larry's parents started getting involved. At a dinner at their house, his mother brought up the subject indirectly. Family is everything, isn't it? Sometimes we need to make sacrifices and forgive to keep unity, she said, looking directly at me. I felt a wave of anger, but held it in. As we left the dinner, Larry tried to calm me. They just want to help, John. They know this is hurting you. I pulled away, feeling betrayed not only by Larry, but by his whole family. I think no one really understands what I'm going through, I murmured. Painful decision. The tension reached a breaking point when Larry suggested I try family therapy with my father. Maybe a therapist could help you find common ground, he said, his voice full of hope. The idea enraged me. You're not listening. I don't want therapy. I don't want reconciliation. I want him out of my life, I shouted, pain and frustration overflowing. Larry, with tears in his eyes, finally understood the depth of my pain. I just wanted to help, he whispered, his voice breaking. But if this is what you really want, then I'll stand by you. Momentary relief. Despite the ongoing tension, there was a moment of relief knowing that Larry finally seemed to understand the gravity of the situation. He promised to support my decision, even if he didn't fully agree. I'll be by your side, John. No matter what happens, he said, holding my hand firmly. Rebuilding the connection. From that point, we started working to rebuild our connection. Conversations about my father became less frequent, and Larry made a conscious effort to support my decisions, respecting my space and my pain. How will this tension affect the narrator's relationship? Keep watching to find out. Mediation attempt. I agreed to meet my father, but only with my mother's mediation. The tension in the air was palpable when I entered the room, where my father was already sitting next to Janet. She gave me a worried look but couldn't hide her anxiety. My mother, by my side, tried to create a calm environment, but my anger simmered just below the surface. First words, "Hi, John," my father said, his voice hesitant. I remained silent, trying to control the whirlwind of emotions threatening to overwhelm me. Janet, beside him, seemed to be holding her breath. "We're here to try to resolve this," he continued, but his voice sounded distant and insincere to me. Janet tried to speak. "John, I know I was wrong to get involved with your father, but I never wanted to cause you this pain." Her attempt at an apology only increased my anger. "You never cared about that, Janet. If you had, you wouldn't have destroyed our family," I replied, my voice filled with resentment. Father's demands. My father, trying to mediate, suggested, "Maybe we can try family therapy. It would be good for all of us." The idea of sitting in a therapy room with Janet and my father made me want to scream. "I don't need therapy with you, Dad. I need you to respect my space and my decision not to have you in my life," I replied, my voice firm. Janet's proposal. Janet, desperate to fix things, offered, "We can start slowly, maybe with monthly meetings. We want to be part of your life." I laughed without humor. "Be part of my life? You gave that up years ago. Now you want to come back as if nothing happened. It doesn't work like that." My mother tries to intervene. My mother, seeing the intensity of the moment, tried to intervene. "John, I know this is hard, but maybe it's a chance to rebuild something." I looked at her, feeling a mix of gratitude and frustration. "Mom, I understand you want the best for everyone, but I can't just forgive and forget." Painful revelations. My father, trying to defend himself, said, "I know I made a mistake, but I did what I thought was best at the time." I was unhappy. These words only fueled my anger. "So your unhappiness justified destroying our family? You left my sister and me behind as if we were nothing." Janet defends my father. Janet, trying to support my father, said, "He was trying to find happiness, John. Everyone deserves to be happy." Her attempt to justify the unjustifiable was the last straw. "And our happiness? Where was your concern for your children's happiness? You never thought about that." Deep in disagreement, the argument escalated quickly. My father, realizing he was losing control, tried to calm the situation. "John, please, we just want a chance to make amends." I shook my head, unable to believe their audacity. Amends? You can't fix years of abandonment with a few words and empty promises. Explosion of feelings. My mother, seeing the confrontation intensify, asked for calm. "Let's all calm down and try to talk one at a time." But my anger was uncontrollable. Calm? They destroyed my life, and now expect me to accept them back just like that? It doesn't work that way. Aggressive goodbye. I stood up abruptly, unable to bear the conversation any longer. It's over. There's nothing more to say. You made your choices years ago, and now you must live with the consequences. My father tried to hold my arm, but I pushed him away. Don't touch me. You lost that, right? My mother consoles. As we left the place, my mother tried to console me. John, I'm so sorry. I know this is hard. I thanked her for her support, but my heart was heavy. I know, Mom, but I can't keep living this lie. Will the meeting lead to reconciliation or a definitive rupture? See you in the next chapter. Even after the failed reconciliation attempt, my sister suggested we try again in a more relaxed setting. Against my better judgment, I accepted an invitation to dinner with my father and sister. Arriving at the restaurant, I was surprised to find Janet and other relatives of my father there. I thought this was just a dinner between us, I said, looking at my sister with a mix of anger and disappointment. I thought it might help if everyone was present, she replied, trying to justify the situation. I reluctantly sat at the table, but Janet and other relatives' presence made the atmosphere unbearable. The tension quickly escalated, culminating in an explosive conflict. Harsh words were exchanged, and I could no longer contain my anger. You think you can force this reconciliation? It's not going to happen, I shouted, standing up from the table. The situation spiraled out of control, with shouting and accusations flying from all sides. I stormed out of the restaurant, feeling betrayed and devastated. Once again, my attempts to find a peaceful solution were crushed by the painful reality. What will happen after this emotional explosion? Find out in the next chapter. The tension with Larry reached a breaking point after the disastrous dinner. Sitting in the living room, Larry tried once more to argue in favor of reconciliation. Carlos, I know it was hard, but you can't keep holding on to so much resentment. It's consuming you. I can't believe you're on his side, Larry. I thought you understood, I replied, my voice trembling with frustration. I just want what's best for you. I can't stand seeing you suffer like this, he said, trying to reach for my hand. But I pulled it back. If you really wanted what's best for me, you'd understand my decision. I can't forgive him, and I can't be with someone who doesn't support me. The decision to call off the wedding was painful, but necessary. Larry tried to apologize and promise changes, but my trust was shattered. I needed someone who stood by me unconditionally, and Larry wasn't that person. Will the narrator be able to rebuild his life after these breakups? Keep watching to find out. Janet's attempts to reconnect became so invasive that I started considering a restraining order. She showed up at my work, left messages at my door, and even tried talking to me at public events. It was unbearable. I consulted a lawyer about the possibility of obtaining a restraining order. You have every right to seek protection from this kind of harassment, he said, encouraging me to proceed. My mother and sister stood by me throughout this process. They cut ties with my father and Janet, defending me against any manipulation attempts. This support was crucial for me to stay firm in my decision. Will the narrator find peace and security? See in the final chapter. I decided it was time for a fresh start. I adopted a kitten, Sasha, who brought some joy and comfort into my life. I began focusing on my mental health and happiness, starting individual therapy to deal with past traumas. I felt stronger each day, determined to rebuild my life without the shadow of abandonment and betrayal. Therapy helped me find new ways to cope with the pain and anger, allowing me to finally move forward. Supported by my mother, sister, and friends, I started planning a positive future. I felt a renewed sense of purpose and resilience, ready to face any challenges that came my way. What other stories of resilience and overcoming will be shared? Keep watching our channel for more inspiring stories. If you enjoyed following this story, don't forget to leave a like. And if you want to follow more stories, reports, and surprising revelations seen on Reddit, subscribe to our channel and turn on notifications. It will be a pleasure to have you with us.